You guys got to see this. Democrats keep making excuses for Kamala Harris's loss, that it's the media's fault, that Biden should have stepped down earlier, that Americans were racist and they're sexist. All the list goes on and on and on. Well, Shark Tank millionaire Kevin O'Leary, he had to shut them down and tell them what's what about their candidate. Watch.
Mistake actually came very early on. They didn't run a process. They made an excuse of $317 million in the kitty. They kept the same campaign manager and said, we will anoint this faulted, broken candidate who was inconsequential in her vice presidency, lost in 2019, as you detailed, complete loser in 2020, never could articulate anything, had no compassion for people. And her own advocates, let's not forget this. I remember the minute this happened, I was in Europe. She went on to The View. All those women wanted her to win. They threw her a softball. They threw her a second softball. She was so weak as a candidate, she couldn't even answer that she would do something different. It ricocheted around the world. She was finished.
Well, let me go.
They will never do that again.
You see, Kevin O'Leary, he delivered this brutal takedown of the vice president on a CNN panel where they're making all sorts of excuses. But really, guys, the fact of the matter is this. They had a broken candidate who was never going to win. And I told my uncle this. You know what he said? A person who never won a primary does not get to be president. And you guys know my uncle, right? He always knows how to get to the point. And the same with Kevin O'Leary. The multimillionaire investor, if not billionaire, talked about Trump 2.0 recently. Just watch and see the difference between how he described Kamala Harris and how he talked about the president-elect. Here.
Just ask you, and this is the age-old question, so I know that you're going to have to caveat it with you don't know the answer for sure. But he says a lot of things. He has said a lot of things. Do you really think he's going to do all these things? Do you really think that he's going to put tariffs in across the board, or is that a negotiating strategy that he was doing to say something to signal to China?
As you know, going through Congress right now is a reciprocal tariff bill, which is very fair. If Germany taxes us or tariffs us at 10% on cars, we do the same to them. It'll be reciprocal, with the exception of China. I'm an advocate for turning up the heat on China so that we get them to the table to join that act, because they came into the WTO in 1999. Trump is using these. People think they're sales taxes. They're not. It's a negotiating tactic. This is what he does well, I would argue. If the supreme leader now knows that Trump is going to run the show. If Trump says, look, I'm going to crank you up to 400% until you get over here to Washington, he'll fly to Washington. That's what we need. We need Trump's negotiating tactic, his uncertainty that he brings to the table. These adversaries get nervous when they don't understand the direction he's going.
Do you believe, from what you're hearing now, and maybe the fact that Trump looks easily on track to win the popular vote, the fact that this is such a mandate, it wasn't just a narrow, eked out victory, right? Overall, it wasn't. Does that change the fact, the big worry that people have is who's he going to attract to work for him? After last time, after what the general said,
I've
after
got
all the
good news
people.
for you, Aaron, on this one. Howard Ludwig is running the transition team. I've had a chance to speak with him very briefly. A-listers coming in. We're not going to have the same volatility we had on Mandate 1. Trump 2.0 really wants this to work. It's not going to be a rotating doors of guys coming in and writing books the next week about their horrible experience. They're going to find great people to run this mandate, because this is his legacy mandate. He's going to be good for 3 years before he's a lame duck. He knows that. I think
he does know that? You think he cares about legacy?
You know, being shot at twice kind of sobers you up a little bit. I think that's changed him. He's an older guy now. He's a far more pragmatic guy. I'm an advocate to let him go do his thing and watch him go to work. He cares a lot about the economy, and he's made promises he wants to keep. You get to that point in your life where you want to leave something behind that was a great thing you did. And I think this is going to be what Trump's focused on.
Now, honestly, guys, I cannot wait for Trump to start already. I mean, maybe they could even move up his inauguration date. I don't know. Instead of January 20th, can we just maybe have it, I don't know, on December 20th instead? Just in time for the holidays. What do you guys say? Now, seriously, guys, to borrow Kamala Harris's favorite phrase, we're about to be unburdened by what has been in the last 4 years. Now, just for that, I am personally thankful. And I'm also thankful that we don't have to hear these excuses from Democrats blaming everybody but themselves.
Just listen to Harris senior advisor and former Obama campaign manager David Plouffe.
It was a dead heat race, but, you know, at the end of the day, the political atmosphere was pretty brutal. Given that we had a challenging political environment, the fact that we got the race to dead heat was positive So I think where Kamala Harris campaigned, we were able to keep the tide down a little bit. Margin of error race where we inherited a deficit, we got it to even.
What is he talking about? A dead heat got it to even? Trump won all 7 swing states, all 7 of them. He won the popular vote outright, the first Republican to do that in 20 years. Trump also got more votes in raw vote total than any Republican nominee in history. And all 50 states, including D.C., moved closer to the right. But the race was close? Really? That's what they're going with? I mean, in hindsight, the race was never in doubt because Kamala Harris refused to break away from Joe Biden. During the campaign, I remember this, NBC told us that her reticence to break from Biden was because, according to one source, quote, her level of loyalty is incredible. But was her loyalty really the problem?
She felt like she was part of the administration, so why should she look back and cherry pick some things that she would have done differently when she was part of it? And she had tremendous loyalty to President Biden. Imagine if we said, well, we would have taken this approach on the border. Imagine the round of stories coming out after that of people saying, well, she never said that in a meeting, or what meeting when she said this, or I remember when she did that. And it wasn't going to give us what we needed because it wouldn't be a clean break. The best we could do, and the most that she felt comfortable with, was saying, like, look, vice presidents never break with their presidents.
The truth is, she never pushed back on Biden in meetings, ever. She was complicit in the 4-year decline of America, and she knew if she suggested otherwise, Biden's vindictive staff would leak like a sieve to the press. It's why the campaign spent 5 weeks hiding her from the media, because they simply could not figure out the answer to the easiest question: how are you different than Joe Biden? But the Harris campaign is still full of excuses, and they say it is not their fault. No, it's the media's.
What can I say, guys? The victim mindset is a loser mindset. And again, it fits them perfectly, right? Because you know what they've been hiding from us all this time? Well, a top aide to Vice President Kamala Harris during her presidential campaign just revealed that internal polls never actually saw her defeating President-elect Donald Trump. Now, again, guys, their own internal polls all this time, they were saying that she never had a chance. But apparently, this was not conveyed to those who were collecting those high dollar donations for her bid, meaning that they didn't want the liberal gravy train to stop running, so they lied to their own people, and more importantly, to the American people, guys. DNC National Finance Committee member and Harris campaign fundraiser Lindy Lee confirmed this. The Kamala Harris official said that they were told definitely that she had a shot at winning, that it wasn't even a shot. She was told that Pennsylvania was looking good and that we would win 3 to 4 swing states. And get this, guys, at one point, they were told that they were going to win Iowa. Yeah, sounds like they were being served Kool-Aid over there at the Harris campaign. But it looks like Kamala Harris's senior advisor, David Plouffe, was in on it. At least that's what it sounded like when he talked about the vice president's chances at that point in time on Pod Save America. This was a show hosted by staffers of former President Barack Obama. He said that they didn't get the breaks that they needed on election day, and it surprised people because there were these public polls that came out in late September, early October, showing them with leads that they never saw. You notice how he talked about getting breaks on election day, right? Meaning that he knew that they didn't have it all along in the polls and that people were surprised. Well, not him. Plouffe, along with other top Kamala Harris aides, Jen O'Malley Dillon, Stephanie Cutter, and Quentin Fulks, joined the podcast to share why they believe they lost the election. The way Plouffe sees it, when Kamala Harris became the nominee, she was behind. They climbed back, and so by the end, it was just a jump ball race. See, a Harris senior official admitting that they were lying about Kamala Harris's chances all along, you guys. I mean, why isn't mainstream media talking about this? And while the top advisors on the campaign were apparently aware of Kamala Harris's polling deficit, this information was seemingly obscure to other relevant parties, including those soliciting capital from donors such as Lee. According to Lee, it is absolutely not normal for a campaign to obscure this kind of information. But she didn't seem to be stopping from drinking from the liberal Kool-Aid because, according to her, donors' trust will need to be gained back because of this daylight between what the campaign was telegraphing about the situation and the reality. She said that it's not that he beat her that's a shock. It's the extent to which he beat her. It wasn't even close. It was a decisive defeat. So she's still going to work with them after that? Now, seriously, guys, this news needs to go viral. What do you guys think? Drop a quick yes in the comments down below. Hit the like button to show your support. The more engagement that we can get from you guys, the more people actually find this on YouTube. So I appreciate you guys. Oh, and while you guys are at it, don't forget to take a second, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on future videos. I mean, let's take a moment and talk about that brutal takedown from Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, revealing Harris for who she actually is. A mistake made by Democratic Party bosses who foisted a weak vice president on voters to avoid a primary and instead left Americans no choice but to reject the faulted, broken presidential candidate. Wow. Kevin O'Leary went in. I mean, that's the honest to God truth, isn't it? Even their own internal polls have been saying it all along. But really, the way he said it, O'Leary just eviscerated Kamala Harris for running a poor campaign from the get-go. But he also highlighted the party that propped her up, saying that the root of this mistake actually came very early on. They didn't run a primary process. I mean, who does that, right? After their own supporters voted for Biden in the primary, they just pulled him out of the race and put Kamala Harris in without so much as a normal vetting process. As Kevin O'Leary said, they just decided that they will anoint this faulted, broken candidate who was inconsequential in her vice presidency, lost the 2019 primary race, and was a complete loser in 2020. Someone who Kevin O'Leary said never could articulate anything, had no compassion for people. He mentioned how the Democratic presidential candidate went on The View and ended up not being able to answer that she would do something different to Joe Biden. So it ricocheted around the world and she was finished. Now, let's compare it to the man's reaction when the election results were released and they announced Trump's victory over Harris. He told Kamala Harris that what's happened here is the system self-corrected. Plain and simple. When you try to break the American model, it fixes itself. When it gets too crazy, it fixes itself. So for the Shark Tank multimillionaire, whether you love Trump or you hate him, every Democrat owes him a thank you very much, Mr. President. I mean, their candidate was so proud about how her campaign raised more than $1.4 billion through grassroots funds. The vice president boasted in a video message to her supporters that her campaign received a historic $1.4 billion, almost $1.5 billion from grassroots supporters, which Kamala Harris said was the most in any presidential campaign history. She said nearly 8 million donors contributed an average donation of about $56 to fuel their people-powered campaign. But what did they do with the money? Well, she blew through the whole thing and even left the campaign in debt. And what did the American people get for all their trouble? Celebrity-filled concert rallies in swing states that took place in the final days of the campaign, as well as expensive ad campaigns. Even their own mega donors are turning on them. John Morgan, a wealthy trial lawyer and one of these Democratic mega donors, said all of a sudden, everybody's got the keys to the candy store, ad buyers, talent consultants. There's 100 days to do it. And the money just started pouring in. And guess what? Now they're talking about Harris's next steps in her political career after losing the election. I mean, Harris has maintained a low profile after losing to President-elect Donald Trump. She was in Kailua, Hawaii not too long ago for a vacation from her campaign schedule and duties as vice president. But according to Harris insiders, everything from running for governor in her home state of California to another presidential run could be on the table, especially since California Governor Gavin Newsom, or as Donald Trump would call him, Gavin Newsom, can't really run for another term in 2026. And reportedly, the guy has White House aspirations of his own. Now, according to former Harris aide Brian Brokaw, could she run for governor? Yes. Do I think she wants to run for governor? Probably not. Could she win? Definitely. Would she like the job? I don't know. Could she run for president again? Yes. But come on, guys. Do they really think Kamala Harris is still a viable option at this point? I mean, the woman went on a trip to Hawaii following her loss. That's like celebrating losing. This while staffers from the Democratic National Committee were surprised by sudden layoffs, getting fired, probably coming from all of the talk that the Kamala Harris campaign spent $1.5 billion in 15 weeks on a losing effort. Then she had Biden attack dog White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre defend her vacation, saying that she doesn't think that there's anything wrong with that and that she even deserves some time to be with her family and to have some downtime. The last part's what really got my gears grinding, guys. The press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, said that Harris has worked very hard over for the last 4 years, and her taking a couple of days to be with her family, good for her. Good for her. I mean, okay, sure. But what about her own campaign staffers being laid off during the holiday season? What about working class Americans who don't know where their next paycheck's going to be coming from, their next meal, their next rent payment, their next car payment? I mean, seriously, guys, these people are so detached from reality that they really need a wake-up call, much like what Kevin O'Leary did with that CNN panel. I mean, am I right, guys? Sound off in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on this. And when you're done with that, don't forget to check out our other videos on the channel. Now, I just uploaded a fresh one talking about the most fatal blow to DEI yet. And it came from no less than retail giant Walmart. I'm telling you guys, liberals are on the retreat. So this is the time to strike. Now, I talked about it in detail in my video. Be sure to check that one out right after this one. As always, thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing. Check out this video coming up here or our playlist down below. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Be safe.